This conference will now be recorded.
అవి ఒక 3 or 4 తెప్పించండి మరి చిన్నగా ఉన్నాయి. Good morning all of you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What was our last class on? Do you remember anything? We discussed about, we are in the topic of diabetes. We discussed about on the first day what is the diabetes, what it means and all. Regarding the values, how do you have to identify a patient of diabetes? And the second was complications of diabetes. Either acute complications or chronic complications we discussed. Acute are the ones like presenting as DKA or HONC. Chronic are the ones like microvascular and macrovascular complications. That was our second class. And the third class was on OHS. Hope you remember, that was our last class. And today we are discussing about insulin. Once we discuss about insulin, that will be the end of diabetes chapter. But see, diabetes is very huge chapter, which is like, if we have to talk about each and everything, it takes there is an entire textbook just for diabetes. So you can understand like almost all the body is involved with the diabetes. So it just can't be completed, but whatever for initial stages of understanding at your stage of MBBS, I just made this comprehensive presentation so that it will be useful for you, so that I'm not overloading you. At the same time, I'm making you understand the basics. So this is all the basics. I didn't discuss anything major with you in these few classes. I only discussed the basics. Either see it with the OHS or anything. OHS mostly it will be covered in your pharmacology only. So I thought like you would be remembering. And what I did is just only the introduction or something like brief explanation of whatever you know it before. So today we are talking about insulins. So coming to the introduction of what is an insulin, it is which kind of hormone it is. It is also a hormone, right? That is which is produced from our body. So which kind of secretion is it? It is a protein secretion, and it is produced by islets of Langerhans of pancreas. And it is an anabolic hormone. What does anabolic mean? It is something like insulin is helpful in the transport of glucose from outside to inside of the body. When that transport of glucose is happening, inside the cell, energy is produced, or like the glucose is utilized. And energy, it is utilized for the glucose is utilized for the production of energy. So it is an anabolic hormone. There are several other hormones which are catabolic. Catabolic is something destroying the energy or breaking the energy. Here it is producing energy, so it is anabolic hormone. And coming to the history, you know pretty well that it is discovered by Banting and Best. Okay, and the insulin is initially extracted from animals, cattle and pigs pancreas, and then later it shifted to the recombinant technology. So that is how insulin was produced initially from the animals. Not only that, vaccines, everything were produced initially from the animals. You come to immunization class, which we had previously. Coming to the initial live vaccines or live attenuated or killed vaccines. Usually, the live and the live attenuated. Where did it come? Or like the toxin. Antitoxin, everything came from the animal source initially. Later we started producing by recombinant technology. And coming to the structure, insulin is a polypeptide, as we told. It is a protein which is having polypeptides, and this hormone has 51 amino acids. These amino acids are distributed in two chains, chain A and B. Chain A is bit shorter compared to that of B. Chain A contains 21 amino acids, whereas chain B contains 30 amino acids, and they are connected by disulfide bonds. The connection is between the two chains. I'm telling one polypeptide is connected to the other. That is a polypeptide chain with the peptide bonds. But one chain with the other chain is connected with the help of disulfide bonds. And initially, when insulin is secreted, it is secreted as pre-proinsulin, which has 110 or 110 amino acids. And then it is cleaved to proinsulin. And the proinsulin has 86 amino acids. And this proinsulin is then further converted into, or like cleaved into, insulin, which has 51 amino acids. Coming to the catabolism. Okay, initially we discussed like insulin is produced from the uh, pancreas, islets of pancreas. Now, how is it degraded? Let's discuss step by step. Like production over, then catabolism. Catabolism in the sense, I didn't say that it is a catabolic hormone, but how is it catabolized in the body, or how is it broken down in our body? Usually, insulin after secretion, its half-life is only 3 to 4 minutes. It is very short acting. So what's happening? The major organ of degradation is it is degraded either in the liver, kidney, or placenta. Placenta in case of pregnancy. See, so that is the reason in there will be gestational diabetes, and some people they are more sensitive towards the during the pregnancy time. They are more prone to hyperglycemic level differences. And the hormone which is the enzyme which is responsible for the catabolism is glutathione insulin deoxyribonuclease. And see here, this is a picture where you are seeing the action of insulin in response to glucose. Usually, whenever glucose is present outside, like when you have consumed of good food and your sugar levels have increased in the body or in the blood, they are going to be increasing in the blood circulation and they come near the cell. See, this glucose is outside the cell. So whenever coming nearer to the cell, they just open up the glut transporters or glut channels. So whenever these channels are open and they start coming inside, what happens is like in response to this glucose is entering inside the cell, at the same time insulin acts on the insulin receptors. And please you stop telling present 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 all the time. You give the attendance at the end of the class. Okay. So insulin, when it comes and acts on the insulin receptor, you see it's a transmembrane receptors with alpha and beta units, subunits. So once insulin comes and sits in this channel, it signals the insulin signaling pathways, or like down signaling pathways. So what are the signaling pathways finally doing? They have effect on all the 4 lineages. It affects the insulin, it affects the lipid metabolism, protein metabolism is also affected, and glucose metabolism, or like glucose utilization is well known, or like it is happening. And it also affects on growth. Insulin is responsible for the growth, maintenance of growth. Okay, so insulin signaling pathway, finally what it does is there are glutathions which will be present inside the cell, or which will be made inside the cell. These glutathions are formed in the form of will be present in the form of a vesicle. Now the calcium influx and all happens because of the insulin. Once the calcium influx happens, the calcium, what it is doing, it is helping in the coagulation of the vesicle with that of, or outpoaching of the vesicle with that of the membrane. When that happens, the glutathions are transported from inside of the cell to outside. So more amount of glucose can be taken inside. See, first it is glucose derived, more glucose, more insulin, and then further more amount of glutathions production, and further which leads in glucose intake or increased glucose intake. So it is like a circle. So first initially glucose it is, which stimulates the insulin, which forms the glutathions, and glutathions takes up the place of the transmembrane areas, and then more amount of glucose will be transported inside. Okay. Coming to humoral or hormonal and neural regulation and its secretion. What is happening, or what's with the hormonal regulation? Intra-islet pancreatic interactions are happening. How is that happening? This is similar to the one which I told you before. See, whenever the glucose is present, the insulin production increases. And then growth hormone, there is also there is also interaction of several other hormones with that of insulin, like that of growth hormone, corticosteroid, thyroid hormone, everything. These are all one hormone leads to the interaction with the other, and upregulation and downregulation occurs in an way so that the main primary core essential things are maintained normally. See, insulin and growth hormone also go hand in hand. Growth hormone also helps in the as the growth and all requires the insulin, right? Growth, how does it happen? Because of energy. How does the energy come? Because of glucose. How does the glucose enter the cell? Because of insulin. These all are interrelated. And steroid is something that of similar, the effect is like that of, it also helps in the, or not helps, rather to say it causes increase in the glucose levels in our body. Steroids. And thyroxine, again it shows what does it do. Thyroxine, its effect. Thyroxine is a thyroid hormone. It is a metabolic hormone which is responsible for our basal metabolic rate, which maintains our weight. How is it happening? All related to the glucose, energy, everything. So it all shows effect on insulin release in response to glucose. And that is a hormonal regulation, which other hormones interrelated or inter managing one another, so that the glycemic level is maintained. Why is it important is next when we go to the hypoglycemic chapter, then you will know more about it. Because whenever the insulin, you see whenever the hypoglycemia occurs, or like either leave out the insulin, either you take because of the excess insulin dosage, because of, or because of OHs, or per se because of pancreatic tumors. When you are having hypoglycemic attacks, there are some counter regulatory hormones which are going to act and increase the glucose levels. Those counter regulatory hormones are these whatever we talked now: growth hormone, corticosteroid, and thyroxine. So how is it happening? Because they are all interrelated. So whenever hypoglycemia is occurring in the body, so the growth hormone initially acts and it causes slight increase in the glucose levels. Still, when the hypoglycemia is not corrected, then what is happening? Stress is increasing in our body. In response to stress, which hormone is released? Corticosteroid. So corticosteroid then increases the glucose level, similar with that of thyroxine. But the most well-known effect is with the growth hormone and corticosteroid comparatively. That is a hormonal regulation which is more important for hypoglycemia. When hypoglycemia occurs, whatever the cause. And coming to the neural regulation, what is happening? See, this left side one is because of on stimulation. Whenever the stimulation of adrenergic alpha and beta receptor occurs, both the alpha and the adrenergic or sympathetic stimulus, because of sympathetic stimulus, what do we think? Sympathetic beta, if it is stimulated, the insulin release is increased. Whenever the insulin release is increased, there is hypoglycemia. Coming to adrenergic or sympathetic alpha 2 receptors, whenever they are stimulated, insulin release is decreased. Whenever the insulin release is decreased, what is happening? Glucose levels are going to increase. Okay, that is the difference with alpha and beta. And then coming to muscarinic receptors, acetylcholine or vagal mediated, what they do, they increases the insulin release. And primary central site of regulation of insulin secretion is hypothalamus, ventrolateral nuclei, and ventromedial nuclei. Coming to insulin function, what it does. In the previous slide, we have told like it affects both lipid metabolism and protein metabolism and glucose metabolism. How is it happening? So, how is it that insulin going to affect fatty acids? How is it like it's going to affect glucose? How is it like it's going to affect amino acids? So insulin in the liver, what it is doing is it is decreasing glycogenolysis. So what is the insulin doing? It is increasing the glucose inside the cell. Whenever glucose is inside, there is no chance or there is no point for the glycogen to be broken, because glycogen is also glycogen per se is broken for us to have the energy. But whenever we have glucose, there is no point in breaking the glycogen. Glycogen is stored as such, and glycogenolysis is decreased because glucose is already inside in the cell. And gluconeogenesis is decreased because already glucose is there. There is no need of the production of glucose, extra glucose from that of non-glucogenic sources, non-usual sources. So whenever glucose is more inside the cell, what happens to ketones? Ketones are decreased, or ketogenesis is decreased. Ketogenesis is something to do with that of lipids. So whenever the glucose is not there and whenever the lipid is broken down, lipids are broken down, that is when ketogenesis or ketone production forms. So in this case, it is quite opposite to that. Glucose is sufficient. There is no need for the energy sources to be shifted from that of glucose to that of lipids. And then it increases glycogen synthesis. As more amount of glucose is inside the cell, what is happening? It is going to be shifted for the storage form. The storage form is glycogen. And fatty acid synthesis. Storage form is glycogen, and also other form which is kept inside or for the further future utilization, it is a fatty acids. So it is formed further into fatty acids. So see, this is the main mechanism targeted nowadays. Like it is not anyone for weight reduction or anything. It is not just you decrease the fat intake in your food, but it is decreasing the carbohydrate intake in your meal. Why is it important for you to decrease your carbohydrate intake? Because most of our diet contains excess of carbohydrates, which are further stored into glycogen and fatty acids, or like converted into fatty acids. So it is first primary or mandatory cut your calories is just to decrease the synthesis of glucose, or like the utilization of glucose for the fatty acid synthesis. Per se, whatever the lipids we are taking or fats we are taking in our diet is not as much as that of sugars. More amount of Western diet, either it might be a pasta or noodles, etc., or burgers, everything. It contains more amount of sugars. Sugars are ultimately turned into fatty acid, though it might not necessarily have fats in the diet. In coming to the adipose tissue, what is it happening? So whenever insulin is there, there is sufficient glucose and there is no need for the lipids to be broken down. So the lipolysis is decreased. So whenever the lipolysis is decreased, what is happening? More amount of lipids are present and more amount of glycerol formation occurs. And what it does is increase fatty acid formation, and increased glucose uptake is further happening. And then coming to the muscle area, what is it doing to the muscle? In the same way, whenever glucose is more, the energy is utilized. There is no need for next other source of energy to be broken, that is the protein need not be broken. So whenever protein need not be broken, it means that protein catabolism need not occur. So see, for that also, whenever you're doing exercise and all, for your protein to be building up or for your muscle to be building up, you should take enough calorie so that the amount of energy which you are burning while you're exercising is broken from the glucose, not from the other sources. What the other sources I mean is like the protein. Usually you're building the protein, you're building up the muscle, you do it. Whenever you're doing that, you should be having enough glucose so that your glucose is utilized, not the other source or protein to be converted as glucose or to be converted as a carbohydrates and utilized. So more important is you have sufficient glucose in the body or energy in the body before you have exercise, so that your protein won't be broken down. And then when protein is when protein catabolism is decreased, amino acid oxidation is decreased, or increased amino acid uptake also happens. And then further glucose uptake increases, as already we have seen, and increased protein synthesis, glycogen synthesis, etc., as we have seen. So why is it like different organ? See, in liver, the primary source of what we are telling here is liver. It is a glucose initially utilized, and also it is storing as glycogen and fatty acid. Coming to the adipose tissue, it is not letting it to melt down that fat or decreasing lipolysis. Coming to the muscle, it is decreasing the protein catabolism. So any doubt further? This is an important slide because this is from your biochemistry also. I think you all know it better. Coming to the insulin in body, insulin per se in our body is secreted in two forms. There is basal, some amount of basal insulin which is secreted all the time, and then and then whenever you take a meal or you eat something, because of the glucose stimulus, the insulin is secreted. That is bolus insulin or meal associated insulin. So basal insulin generally is secreted at a rate of 0.5 to 1 unit per hour, and it suppresses hepatic glucose production overnight and intermeal, and it prevent the catabolism, lipid and protein catabolism, and the ketosis and unregulated amino acid release is prevented, and it reduces glycolipotoxicity. So that is the use of this basal insulin. Usually your glucose should be maintained around 100 to 140, whatever the range it is. Whenever your glucose should be maintained in that particular range, your body, what it does is always it secretes some amount of insulin so that this target is maintained. But whenever your glucose levels inside the body is increasing, so from 140 to 150 or like 150 to 160, whenever it is increased, that much amount of excess insulin is released, or like the peak of insulin is released, so that 140, 150 or 160 is brought back to the original value, whatever that you had previously. So that is the basal insulin is usual insulin which is secreted just to maintain your neutrality of glucose. But whenever you are eating something and increasing the glucose level, that is when the extra insulin is secreted. That is the bolus insulin. Usually, when does the glucose increase? When you eat something. So that is meal associated or bolus insulin. What it does, it immediately rises and peaks after 1 hour of a meal. After you eat, whenever the glucose levels is increased, it usually increases. And then meal associated carbohydrate disposal occurs because of this, and storage of nutrient occurs and helps suppress intermeal glucose production. See, this is the normal person's blood glucose and insulin level correlation. See, this is the normal glucose levels, which is some around 80 to 100 if you take. This is the 80 to 100 range. Initially, it is the night time. Usually, it is maintained. You are not eating anything. It is maintained around 80 to 100. So, whenever in the morning you are having a breakfast, what is happening? Your glucose level is slightly increasing. Whenever your glucose level is increasing at the very time, see the night time when the glucose is between 80 to 90, this insulin is almost downward. It is like not increasing, or like it is very less, so that your sugars won't further fall down. So once you had a breakfast, your glucose is increasing. In response to that, the insulin is also increasing, and insulin is increasing and helping in the glucose to be maintained in the normal range of 80 to 100 or whatever the previous value you had. After that, during whenever it is maintained regularly by the 2-3 hours time gap, it came to the normal levels. After that, again you had a lunch and also drops back to the normal level. And then you have lunch. After having lunch, what is happening? Your glucose levels are further increasing again. Any disturbance? Are you able to hear me? I'm getting some disturbance from your side, I suppose. Are you all there?
Yes, ma'am.
So during the lunch time, whenever you eat something, again the sugar levels are increasing. After when they are increased, again your insulin level is increasing. Whenever the insulin level increases, it is again trying to bring back to the normal state. Okay. Someone of you try turn off your mic. And because of that lunchtime insulin level. Lunchtime, because of lunchtime when you had some increased glucose levels, same way the parallelly the insulin levels are increasing and it is trying to bring back the glucose levels and it is maintained in the same previous normal range of 80 to 100. So it is maintained like that, and what is happening is your insulin also comes down. After that, have your food again further. In response to that, natural insulin secretion. See, as I told you, in response to excess glucose stimulation,
ఫ్యామిలీ అందరం కలిసి ఉండడానికి కట్టుకున్నాము. అది అంటే ఇప్పుడు 2 అపార్ట్మెంట్స్ ఉన్నాయనుకో, పైన పెంట్ హౌస్, దాని కింద లాస్ట్ ఫ్లోర్ డూప్లెక్స్ లాగా కట్టుకున్నారు. వీళ్ళు పెట్టుకున్నారు ఉండడానికి, పైన స్విమ్మింగ్ పూల్, యోగా, జిమ్ అని. వీడు పోయి చూసి వచ్చి
and coming to the insulin delivery systems. Next, coming to the insulin delivery system, usually there are different modes of delivery system. The standard delivery system, the standard mode of insulin therapy is subcutaneous injection, which every one of you know, and it is done using disposable needles and syringes. We might have seen either in the hospital or like some among your relatives or anyone whom you know might be taking the insulin injections. That is a more standard or like usually used method of subcutaneous insulin. And then coming to the other system, there are portable pen injectors. They are used to facilitate multiple subcutaneous, because every day poking a needle is definitely painful for anyone. Either it might be a normal person or it might be a diabetic patient, a person, because they are also like any other person who doesn't want to get injected every day. So to facilitate that, there is this pen injectors, portable pen injectors. They are portable pen-sized injectors which have been developed later, and they contain cartridges of insulin. Like it's not like daily you will take it into the syringe or through the needle, and daily you won't take it. It is already a prefixated cartridge which comes with a particular dose, so that lasts for a particular period of time, depending how much dose you take. And the other one is continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion devices or insulin pumps. They are external open loop pumps for insulin delivery. These devices have a user programmable pump that delivers individualized basal and bolus insulin replacements and doses based on the blood glucose levels, and it has self monitoring technique. Advanced insulin pumps also have an insulin on board features that adjust a high blood glucose concentration doses to a correct dose. Coming to insulin other device, other methods. Device is about the continuous, as I told you, this is a picture on the left corner. It is about the size of a pager. It can be held near the waist belt, and it has a loop, and it is worn on the lower abdomen. It is placed on a belt or in a pocket, and insulin is infused through thin plastic tubing that is connected to the subcutaneously inserted infusion set. The programming is done through a handheld unit that communicates wirelessly with the pump. And this delivery system is regarded as the most physiological method of insulin replacement. See, because it is able to check your insulin release and check your glucose levels and accordingly release the insulin in your body. So whenever it's increasing your glucose, you can have increased insulin release so that your glucose level is maintained every time in the normal range. Then coming to inhaled insulins, earliest marketed products insulin had several side effects like pharyngitis and pulmonary fibrosis. Exubera was approved in 2006 but was discontinued due to lung complications and inconvenient use reported by the users. And then Afrezza came. It is an ultra rapid acting insulin which was inhaled at the beginning of the meal. It was approved in 2014 by the FDA, and it is administered via a vessel-sized inhaler called as Dreamboat. Afrezza peaks within 12 to 15 minutes and is out of the system within an hour. And the Dreamboat is meant to be thrown away after 15 days to prevent any powder buildup inside that could clog the device. Unlike traditional insulin, it needs no refrigeration, but rather it is kept at a room temperature. Each single-use cartridge holds 4 to 8 units. And it is not recommended for people with diabetes who smoke, nor for treating DKA. Can cause bronchospasms in asthma and COPD patients. And hypoglycemia, cough, and throat pain or irritation are the common side effects reported in this months. Orally absorbed insulin, Oralin, Generex, is developing aerosol containing insulin for the buccal absorption. These are all the newer formulations of insulin, right from the inhaled insulins. Exubera, Afrezza, Dreamboat, and then Oralin. All these are newer methods, but the basic or usual ones which you already know, which we use in our hospital day in and day out, are the usual regular insulin preparations. and they are produced from the beef and pork pancreas and produced initially. Later, it is produced from the recombinant DNA technology in the E. coli. There are different types of insulins. See, it might be a bolus insulin and a basal insulin. Both of them are they are manufactured, and then there will be combination insulin also. The bolus insulins are regular, Lispro, Aspar, Glulysin, and the basal insulins are NPH, Lente, Ultralente, Glargine, and Detamir. And the combination insulin are the regular NPH combination in the ratio of 70 to 30 and 50 to 50. The most common mixed is this one. And then coming to Humalog mix, that is 75 25 or NPL. And then Novolog, which is again 70 30 or NPA. And coming to the basal regimen, in that Glargine once daily at a bedtime or Detamir twice daily is given. Before this, it's better for us to discuss this slide. See here in this table, you will see bolus insulin and the basal insulin. Coming to the bolus insulin, the rapidly acting insulin are in your pharma, you should be remembering Aspar, Glulysin, Lispro. These are the rapid acting insulins. Their onset starts within 10 to 15 minutes and they peak at 1 to 1.5 hour, and it acts for a duration of 3 to 5 hours in our body. Okay. Almost all are similar. There might be slight differences, but almost what you have to remember is 10 to 15 minutes onset, peak 1 to 1.5 hour, duration 3 to 5 hours or 6 hours, you can remember. That is with rapid acting. And then there are short acting insulins. The short acting are insulin regular, which takes the onset of action within 30 minutes or and then it peaks in 2 to 3 hours, and its duration of action is for 6.5 hours. And then coming to the basal insulins, the basal insulin is the basal insulin are comparatively long acting. Bolus are just before you have your food. This insulin, when given, will bring back the sugar which has elevated because of meal very rapidly. And coming to basal insulin, these are long-acting insulins. They are secreted all throughout the day just to maintain the constancy of blood sugar levels. Either it might be during the night time or during the morning times, just without a meal. Coming to basal insulins, intermediate acting among them, they are usually cloudy in color. So whenever in the ward, you will be having two types of injections for insulin. One is clear and one is cloudy. How do you want to say? Cloudy is which one, and the clear one is which type of insulin? The usual two insulins either we use are either Actrapid or Mixtard in a usual practice. So how do you want to differentiate between the Mixtard and Actrapid? Actrapid is usually clear in color, whereas this Mixtard is cloudy. Okay, that is because it has NPH. Again, NPH, coming to it, its action is 1 to 3 hours, and it has a peak of 5 to 8 hours, and then it is acting up to 18 hours. So this is the first ones are short acting insulin, rapid and short acting, and this is the intermediate acting. And then last we have the long acting insulins. Long acting insulins are insulin Detamir, Glargine, and Glulysin. Detamir, it is having onset of action within 90 minutes, and then it doesn't have a peak at all, and it acts up to 24 hours. And coming to Glargine, Lantus, it also has onset within 1.5 hours, and then it doesn't have a peak, and it has an action up to 24 hours. Okay, coming to the other type of Glargine, U300, it also has up to 6 hours of it can have the onset, and then It can have up to 30 hours action. These are the types of insulin. And coming to the regimen, whenever you start OHS are not working for that patient, then you wanted to decided to put them on insulin. How do you give them? Either you give a basal regimen. Basal regimen is nothing but the long-acting insulin you want to give, and you want to maintain the sugar levels at that normal targeted range. So it is given once daily at bedtime, or if it is regimen twice daily. Basal regimens are usually nighttime single dose and can be used when starting insulin and type 2 diabetes along with OHS. So for daily basal management of sugars, you give basal regimen, long-acting insulin. Along with that, whenever he eats something, just before having the food, they can be put on OHS. And then coming to the next step, that is the conventional split dose regimens. These are usual premix analogs. They are injected twice daily before breakfast and before evening meal. They are used for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes in simple dosing because you just don't want to complicate the doses and all. This has been produced, but it has than the basal insulin, it has 2 times the patient has to inject. The usual mixed comes under this category of medication. And then basal bolus regimen. This is an intensive regimen. Here you are giving glargine at the blood time to cover the basal secretion. Along with that, you are giving the short-acting insulin also to cover at the meal time. So you are almost simulating that of the normal glucose or glycemic control in the body, or like how usually normal person has his insulin acting in his body. In the same way, you are going to stimulate the insulin which you are giving to the patient in the same way. Give it like as endogenously produced, means similar to that of endogenous production. And then coming to indications, there are absolute and relative. Absolute is type 1 diabetes and gestational diabetes, ketoacidosis, and relative are type 2 diabetes with primary, secondary failure to OHS, surgery under general anesthesia, and type 2 diabetes with symptoms of glucose toxicity, acute illness, acute infection, pneumonia, septicemia, and active pulmonary tuberculosis, acute MI, CVA, diabetic nephropathy, and chronic liver disease. And the role of insulin in type 1 diabetes. Insulin therapy. Usually it is given as a dose of 0.5 units per kg. Like if at all a person is 60 kgs, you try to give him 30 units. And 4 into day, that is 40% NBH and 60% rapid acting LOs if you are considering to give him a combination insulin. Excuse me. And then coming to 30-70 dose calculation, if at all this is also given as a 0.3 unit per kg. If at all the patient is 80 kgs, then you give 80 into 0.3, that is 24 units. This 24 units you are calculating as you're dividing into 2/3 and 1/3. 2/3 is given in the AM and 1/3 at the night time. So that is how you get 16 and 18 units to be given for a patient with 80 kg. This is calculation based on the weight. There are several factors for the dose to be adjusted, not just the weight, but also insulin resistance, which you can't be seeing with your naked eye. It needs some practice where you know how much of insulin resistance is present inside the person's body. And to start insulin dose for type 1, you give like around 1 to type 1 diabetes, you give 1 to 0.2 to 1, whereas for type 2 diabetes you give 0.2 to 0.3 units per kg per day. because there is no absolute insulin deficiency in type 1. In type 2 it is insulin is there, but there is insulin resistance. In split mixed regimens, 2/3 as intermediate acting and 1/3 as short acting insulin is supposed to be given. So that is how you have 30-70 usual and 50-50 in other case. The basal bolus regimen, half basal at bedtime and half bolus in 3 divided doses. Doses is individualized and titrated. So, and the sites where insulin is given are the abdomen, abdominal area, the sides, if you see this picture, and the thighs, lateral aspect. When you see the front, you can give front, that is abdomen and thighs. Coming, when you see from the back, you can give the shoulders, arms behind, or like the posterior aspect or back side of our body can be given, and then the buttocks area, and then lateral side of the thigh. Thigh is there, but arm better to give the posterior aspect as it is bulky. And then coming to the reactions, usually insulin, one of the known side effect is hypoglycemia. Because of hypoglycemia, patient can have sweating, anxiety, palpitations, tremors, and because of that, there will be counter-regulatory hormones acting and trying to elevate the glucose levels. In the process, the patient can have dizziness, headache, behavioral changes, visual disturbances, hunger, fatigue, weakness, and muscular incoordination, etc. And whenever the sugar levels is between 20 to 50 milligram per deciliter, seizure and coma can occur. When it falls below 20 milligram per deciliter, then the coma can occur. Neuroglycopenia symptoms can occur when it is less than 40. And treatment is usually whenever the patient has hypoglycemia, try to put him on glucose. If it is patient is in a stage to take it orally, give him oral glucose, or else you can give IV. You can give the 5% dextrose, and if it is not reacting well, you can give IV glucagon 0.5 to 1 milligram IV. And the local reactions which can occur for insulin are swelling near the site of infection, lipodystrophy, and allergy, and energy, and edema. So those are the side effects. So this is for today's class. Hope you understood. If any doubts, put in the chat box. You can give your attendance also now. Any doubts? Okay. Thank you.